The small town of Millwood has always been a peaceful and quiet place, but one day a dark shadow fell over the town. When the news announced that a deadly virus had spread through the town, panic began. When the first cases were seen, no one could understand what was going on. However, the rapid spread of the virus and its deadly consequences terrified the town. The virus was named Shadow of Death. Its symptoms were flu-like, including high fever, cough, and shortness of breath. But the Shadow of Death was a much more deadly disease. At first, town officials believed the virus could be contained, but they were quickly proven wrong. The town hospital began to collapse due to the rapidly increasing number of patients of the virus. Although healthcare workers did their best to care for patients, they felt helpless against the deadly effects of the virus. The town was quarantined and no one could go in or out. Residents felt trapped in their homes. Many families have lost loved ones due to the virus. The bodies had to be buried outside the town, further increasing people's suffering. The streets became quiet, shops began to close, and the town turned into a ghost town. However, at a time when despair is spreading through the town, a group of scientists and doctors arrive in town to try to understand and stop the Shadow of Death. They worked devotedly to identify the source of the virus. Scientists and doctors investigated the origins of the Shadow of Death and eventually managed to develop an effective vaccine. The vaccine began to be administered to the town's residents and slowly reversed the effects of the virus the town came together to remember and recover from. The lives lost when the Shadow of Death struck the town of Millwood. Its residents struggled desperately. However, science and human solidarity ended the town's dark days. The town came together even stronger after this tragic period and walked together towards a brighter future. Scientists and doctors continued to track the virus in the town and accelerate the distribution of the vaccine. The townspeople broke out of despair and worked together to completely stop the spread of the virus. People understood the importance of supporting each other and found strength in solidarity. However, the deep scars left by the virus were still felt. More time was needed to commemorate and recover from lost loved ones. The town erected monuments and held commemorations. These commemorations allowed the community to come together and support each other. The vaccine alleviated the suffering caused by the Shadow of Death, but the town's residents had to deal with the fear and anxiety they experienced for a long time. Psychologists and support groups helped people heal emotionally, and the town slowly returned to normal life. Town residents learned important lessons. From this tragic experience, they understood the need to improve health services, better protect public health, and be prepared for crisis situations. They also learned how important people's solidarity and power to help each other is. As the years passed, the town of Millwood stood stronger. Although traces of the virus still exist, the town's residents survived this experience together and began to look to the future with more hope. The story of Shadow of Death was a turning point for the town. This tragic experience served as an inspiration to the challenges that people can overcome with solidarity and determination. The town came together and emerged from the shadow of this deadly virus, moving forward stronger and better Tojith. Elara watched as the town was saved and found hope again. However, the town was still feeling the terrifying effects of the shadow death. People could not get away from their memories and losses. One night, a terrible incident occurred that disturbed the peace of the town. A new strain of shadow death appeared, and the vaccine was ineffective against this new strain. This new type of virus was more deadly and spreading faster. Elara didn't want to watch the town descend into terror again. Elara met with scientists and doctors, and they made efforts to investigate the origin of the new virus. But unfortunately, the virus continued to spread rapidly. The town was once again quarantined, and people were confined to their homes again. Work accelerated to develop a vaccine against this new strain of shadow death, but felt helpless against the speed of the virus. People began to live in fear and despair. Eventually, town officials believed they could find no cure and decided to leave town. They left the town, leaving their homes, memories, and hopes behind. Millwood has become a ghost town, a victim of the shadow of death. Elara remained in the town with the last hope, trying everything to stop the virus. However, the virus infected her too, and Elara eventually died in the quiet streets of the town. His eyes looked at the town's lost hopes and beautiful memories for the last time. Millwood perished under the terrifying effects of the shadow of death. The town's name lived on in memories of what once was in lost stories, but the specter of shadow of death still hovered over the town. This tragic story showed that people can overcome difficulties with hope and solidarity, but it also confronted us with harsh realities that sometimes result in a horrific ending.